What would you do if a child you'd never met walked up to you in the freezing rain and said the 5 words that would change your life forever? This is the true story of how one moment of kindness created a family that was never supposed to exist. But before we dive into this incredible journey, if you believe in the power of kindness, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss stories that restore your faith in humanity. Now, let's begin. The rain fell in sheets across the glass towers of Canary Wharf, turning London's financial district into a blur of reflected lights and shadows. Adrian Fletcher stood under the awning of the Sterling building, watching the November storm with the detached observation of someone who'd learned to keep the world at arm's length. At 38, he'd mastered the art of emotional distance. His tailored charcoal suit was immaculate, his dark hair perfectly styled despite the weather, and his expression carried that careful neutrality that came from years of high-stakes negotiations. Success had found him early: property development, luxury apartments, commercial spaces that reshaped London's skyline. But success, he discovered, was a lonely companion. He was reaching for his phone to summon his driver when he heard it. A small voice, barely audible above the drumming rain. "Please, sir." Adrian looked down and his breath caught. Standing on the wet pavement was a little girl, no more than 4 years old. She had dark curls plastered to her face, her small body trembling in a thin pink raincoat that was clearly meant for spring showers, not this November downpour. Her brown eyes were enormous in her small face, and they held something that Adrian recognized instantly, despite all his carefully constructed walls. "Terror. Are you all right?" The words came out more gently than he'd intended. He crouched down, ignoring the rain soaking through his expensive trousers. "Where are your parents?" The little girl's lip trembled. "Please, sir. I can't wake my mum up." The world seemed to stop. Traffic sounds faded. The rain became white noise. All Adrian could hear was his own heartbeat and those 7 words that cut through every defense he'd built. "What do you mean you can't wake her up?" His voice was steady, but his hands weren't. "Where is she, sweetheart?" "At home. I tried shaking her and calling her name, but she won't open her eyes. She's on the floor by the telly, and she feels really hot." Tears mixed with rain on the child's cheeks. "I got scared. Mum always says if there's an emergency, find a grown-up who looks kind. So I put on my coat and came outside, but everyone just walks past me." Adrian's executive mind kicked into gear, years of crisis management focusing into sharp clarity. "What's your name?" "Lily. Lily Chun." "Okay, Lily. I'm Adrian. Can you take me to your mum? Can you show me where you live?" The little girl nodded and did something that made Adrian's chest physically ache. She reached up and took his hand with absolute trust, her small fingers cold and wet in his palm. She led him through streets that transformed as they walked. The gleaming towers gave way to older buildings, the polished storefronts replaced by corner shops with flickering signs. They turned into a council estate in Poplar, brick buildings with exterior walkways, washing hanging despite the rain, satellite dishes clustered on walls like mechanical flowers. Lily pulled a key on a worn shoelace from inside her coat. Her fingers fumbled with it, and Adrian gently took over, his hands steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. They climbed 3 flights of exterior stairs, rain hammering on the metal railings. The flat was tiny, maybe 400 square feet, but it was clean, Adrian noticed. Loved. Children's artwork covered one wall, held up with colorful magnets. A small bookshelf overflowed with library books. And there, exactly as Lily had described, a woman lay motionless on the thin carpet beside the sofa. Adrian was at her side in seconds. His fingers found her neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, rapid and thready. The woman was young, perhaps 30, with long dark hair pulled back in a braid. Her skin burned with fever, and when Adrian checked her breathing, it was shallow and labored. "Lily, I need to call for help, okay?" "Okay," she whispered. Adrian dialed 999, his voice crisp and clear as he relayed the address. While he spoke, his eyes cataloged details that made his heart sink. A stack of bills on the small table, many stamped with red notices. An empty pill bottle on the kitchen counter. A calendar on the wall with shift schedules written in neat handwriting. 12-hour shifts, sometimes doubles, marked in different colors. A child's drawing pinned to the refrigerator. 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "Me and Mummy," written in careful letters. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. Adrian stepped back, still holding Lily, who had buried her face in his now-soaked coat. She was shaking, from cold or fear or both, and silent tears soaked through the expensive fabric. He rubbed her back gently, whispering words of comfort he wasn't sure he believed. "Is she diabetic?" one paramedic asked, checking the woman's vital signs. "I don't know," Adrian admitted. "I'm not family. Her daughter came to find me." The paramedic looked at Lily, something like respect crossing his face. "Smart girl. She's in diabetic ketoacidosis, her blood sugar's dangerously high. Looks like she's been ill and hasn't been managing her insulin. If you hadn't come." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. They loaded the woman, Elena Chun, according to her ID, onto a stretcher. "We're taking her to Royal London Hospital," the lead paramedic told Adrian. "She's critical but stable. The little one saved her life." At the hospital, Adrian found himself in an uncomfortable plastic chair in A&E, still holding Lily. Someone had given her a blanket and a carton of apple juice, which she sipped mechanically, her eyes fixed on the doors where they'd taken her mother. "Do you have other family?" Adrian asked gently. "Grandparents? An aunt or uncle?" Lily shook her head. "Just Mummy. My daddy left before I was born. Mummy says he wasn't ready to be a daddy yet." Something cracked inside Adrian's carefully constructed chest. This brave little girl who'd walked into a storm to save her mother was completely alone except for the woman fighting for her life behind those emergency room doors. A social worker appeared, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. "I'm Mrs. Williams," she said softly. "Lily, sweetheart, can you tell me what happened tonight?" As Lily recounted the story in her small, halting voice, Adrian learned more. Elena worked as a care assistant at a nursing home in Bethnal Green. She'd been battling flu for over a week, but couldn't afford to miss shifts. Tonight, after a 12-hour day, she'd collapsed. Lily had tried everything, bringing water, the phone, her favorite teddy bear, but Elena hadn't woken up. "I'll need to place Lily in emergency foster care until her mother recovers," Mrs. Williams said quietly to Adrian. "There's no other family, and you're not." "No." The word came out harder than Adrian intended. He softened his tone. "I mean, surely there's another option. She's been through enough trauma for one night. You can't just send her off with strangers right now." Mrs. Williams's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Fletcher, I understand your concern, but we have procedures. You're not family. You're not even an acquaintance. The state has safeguarding protocols, then I'll hire lawyers to work within those protocols," Adrian interrupted, surprising himself with his own intensity. "This child just saved her mother's life by being brave enough to ask a stranger for help. I won't let her be traumatized further by being taken from the one person she feels safe with right now, who happens to be me." Mrs. Williams studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Let me make some calls." 2 hours later, through a combination of Adrian's reputation, his solicitors working overtime, and the highly unusual circumstances, a temporary arrangement was reached. Adrian would be Lily's emergency guardian until Elena recovered, with daily check-ins from social services. "Can we see my mummy first?" Lily asked, her small voice cutting through the bureaucratic discussion. They were allowed into Elena's room briefly. She was awake now, though barely, hooked up to IVs and monitors, her face still pale but her eyes open. When she saw Lily, tears streamed down her cheeks. "Baby, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You were so brave. So incredibly brave." "This is Mr. Adrian," Lily announced. "I found him on the street like you said, and he helped us. He's going to take care of me until you get better." Elena's eyes met Adrian's over her daughter's head. In them, he saw gratitude, yes, but also fear and shame and a fierce protective love that reminded him achingly of his own mother, gone now for 12 years. "I'll keep her safe," Adrian promised quietly. "I'll bring her to visit every day. You focus on getting well." Elena reached out a shaking hand, and Adrian took it. Her grip was weak, but her gaze was steel. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't understand why you're doing this, but thank you." Adrian didn't fully understand it himself. All he knew was that when Lily had taken his hand on that rain-soaked pavement, something had shifted inside him. Some long-dormant part of his heart had cracked open. The part he'd sealed shut after his own family had fallen apart, after he'd thrown himself into work to avoid feeling anything at all. As they left the hospital, Lily's small hand still in his, Adrian looked down at this brave little girl who'd walked into a storm to save her mother. He had no idea that she was about to save him too. That first night, Adrian's Docklands penthouse, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames, its minimalist furniture, and its carefully curated art, felt absurdly wrong with a 4-year-old inside it. Lily stood in the center of the living room, still wearing her damp pink raincoat, her small rucksack on her shoulders, looking utterly lost in the cavernous space. "Are you hungry?" Adrian asked, then realized with creeping horror that his kitchen contained leftover sushi, craft gin, and possibly some expired hummus. Nothing remotely suitable for a child. Lily shook her head. "I'm just sleepy. But I don't have my bed. We'll sort something out. Come on." He led her to the guest room. All chrome fixtures and gray linens, designed for corporate visitors who never came. Lily looked at the king-sized bed, then back at Adrian, her brown eyes serious. "It's too big," she said simply. "I'll get lost." Adrian stood there, this man who negotiated million-pound deals without blinking, completely stumped by the logistics of making a 4-year-old feel safe. Then he remembered something from his own childhood. Before the money, before the success, when his mum had made their tiny council flat feel like a castle. He gathered every pillow and blanket he could find and built a nest on the floor beside the bed. Smaller, cozier, more contained. Lily crawled into it gratefully, her small body finally relaxing. "Adrian," she said as he turned to leave, "will you stay until I fall asleep? I get scared in new places." He settled onto the floor beside her makeshift bed, his back against the wall, his expensive suit rumpled and damp. Lily reached out and took his hand. "My mummy sings to me," she said quietly. "But I know you probably don't know the songs." Adrian's throat tightened. His own mother had sung to him, years ago, before the cancer took her. He'd forgotten that. Or tried to. "I might know a few," he said softly, and began to hum an old lullaby. Words he didn't know he still remembered came back to him, in his mother's voice. Lily was asleep within minutes. But Adrian stayed there, holding her small hand, this brave little girl who'd walked through a storm to save her mother. He thought about his own life, about the walls of glass and steel he'd built around himself, about the years he'd spent accumulating wealth while losing touch with everything that made life worth living. The next morning, Adrian did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He called his assistant and cleared his entire schedule. Then he took Lily shopping, a surreal experience that involved learning what size clothes 4-year-olds wore, that they had strong opinions about colors, and that the cereal aisle was apparently a minefield of crucial decisions. "Not that one," Lily explained patiently, as if he were the child. "That one has too much sugar. Mummy says sugar makes me bounce off walls." They visited Elena every day. Slowly, color returned to her face, strength to her voice. The doctors explained she'd been in diabetic ketoacidosis, her body breaking down because she'd been rationing her insulin to make it last longer, trying to save money. When she got the flu, everything had spiraled. "You can't do that," Adrian said quietly during one visit, watching Elena's face flush with shame. "Your insulin, it's not negotiable." "It's 60 pounds every 2 weeks, Elena whispered. Sometimes I had to choose between that and Lily's shoes, or keeping the heating on, or... She didn't finish, but Adrian understood. He'd watched his own mother make impossible choices. Different circumstances, same desperate mathematics. During those hospital visits, Adrian learned Elena's story. She'd been a nursing student at King's College when she got pregnant. The father, a fellow student, had vanished the moment she told him. Elena had dropped out to work, planning to return to her studies once Lily was older. But that day never seemed to come. Every pound went to rent, food, childcare. She worked 12-hour shifts, sometimes doubles, slept 4 hours a night, and still could barely keep them afloat. On the third day, something happened that made Adrian's blood run cold. He'd brought his mother's old journal to the hospital. He'd been reading it lately, missing her, remembering better times. Elena noticed the worn leather cover. "That's beautiful," she said softly. "It was my mum's. She passed 12 years ago." "I'm sorry," Elena said. Then, hesitantly, "What was her name?" "Margaret Fletcher. She was a cleaner at various hospitals around London. King's College, mostly toward the end." Elena went very still. "Margaret Fletcher?" she repeated slowly. Did she have curly hair? Always wore a silver cross necklace?" Adrian's heart started pounding. "Yes. How did you?" "I knew her," Elena whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "When I was a nursing student first year, I was struggling terribly. Failed my first practical exam, nearly dropped out. Your mother, she was cleaning the student break room one night, found me crying. She sat with me for 2 hours, told me about raising you on her own, how hard it was but how worth it. She said I reminded her of herself at that age." Adrian couldn't breathe. "She stayed late with me several nights that term. Elena continued, her voice shaking. Quizzed me on anatomy, brought me tea, told me stories about you to keep me motivated. She said her son was going to do great things, but the greatest thing she'd ever done was raise him with kindness. She made me promise I'd never give up. Elena was crying openly now. I passed because of her. I stayed in school that year because your mother believed in me. When I got pregnant with Lily and had to drop out anyway, I thought about her constantly. Wondered if I'd let her down. Adrian opened the journal with shaking hands, flipping to the entries from 15 years ago. And there it was, in his mother's careful handwriting. Met a lovely student today, Elena. Chinese girl, first in her family at university, working so hard she's running herself into the ground. Reminds me of myself at that age. Reminded me why I do this work, not just to pay bills, but because sometimes being kind is the only thing that matters. Stayed late to help her study. She's going to be a wonderful nurse someday. Told her about my Adrian. He's doing so well, but sometimes I worry all his success will make him forget what really matters. Hope I'm raising him right. Hope he'll always be kind. The room spun. Adrian looked at Elena, at Lily sleeping in the chair beside her mother's bed, at this impossible circle of connection. She didn't fail you, Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion. Look at Lily. Look at what you've raised. My mother would be so proud of you. But I had to drop out. You made the same choice she did. You put your child first. That's not failure, Elena. That's everything. Elena reached for his hand, and they sat there in silence, connected by a thread of kindness that had traveled through 15 years to save them both. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his mother's words. Hope he'll always be kind. He'd built an empire. He'd accumulated wealth beyond what she could have imagined. But had he been kind? Or had he spent 15 years making money while forgetting the only lesson that mattered? The next morning, watching Lily carefully butter her toast, her tongue poking out in concentration, Adrian felt something shift inside him. These 5 days had been the most alive he'd felt in years. Learning to care for this child, reading her bedtime stories, discovering she was terrified of the Hoover, teaching her to tie her shoes, had cracked open something he thought he'd lost forever. The ability to feel, to connect, to matter to someone in a way that had nothing to do with his bank account. On the 5th day, as Elena was being discharged, Adrian made a decision. I have a proposition, he told her as she packed up her hospital room. And I need you to hear me out before you say no. Elena looked wary but nodded. I have a property in Limehouse near the canal. Nice area, good primary schools. There's a 3-bedroom flat on the 2nd floor that's been sitting empty. I've been holding the building as an investment. I'd like you and Lily to live there. No rent. Adrian, I can't possibly. I'm not finished. He held up a hand gently. I also need someone to manage that building. Handle tenant relations, coordinate maintenance, be on-site for emergencies. It's flexible hours, mostly from home. It pays $40,000 a year plus full health coverage, including dental. You could work 1 job instead of 3 and actually have time with Lily. Elena was shaking her head, but Adrian pressed on. Here's the thing, Elena. 15 years ago, you met my mother when you both needed each other. She helped you stay in school. You reminded her why kindness matters. Now Lily's brought us together, and I think this is my chance to pay forward what my mother started. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering all of us a chance to have something better. Why? Elena whispered. Why would you do all this? Adrian thought about a small hand taking his in the rain. About trust in brown eyes. About a little girl brave enough to walk into a storm. About his mother's words in a journal. About 15 years of success that had left him empty. Because I can, he said simply. Because you're raising an incredible human being who deserves stability. Because I have more than I need, and you need more than you have, and my mother taught me that when those 2 things align, you act. And because, he paused, surprised by the emotion in his voice, because I'd like to be part of your lives, if you'll let me. Not as charity. As family. The kind you choose. Elena was crying now. Adrian handed her tissues, giving her time. Finally, she spoke. 1 condition. I pay rent, even if it's minimal. And you let me earn this job properly. I need to prove I can do it. I need to know I'm contributing, not just someone's project. Deal, Adrian agreed. Though I should warn you, Lily's already informed me I'm required to attend her school nativity play next month. Apparently, I'm family now whether I agreed or not. Elena laughed through her tears. She has a way of deciding these things. What neither of them knew yet was that this circle of kindness was just beginning to spread. Because kindness, once set in motion, never stays contained. 3 months later, Adrian sat in a plastic chair in a primary school gymnasium in Limehouse, surrounded by parents holding phones and grandparents with cameras, watching 4-year-olds in various states of controlled chaos perform a nativity play. Lily, dressed as an angel with slightly crooked wings made of cardboard and tinfoil, waved enthusiastically when she spotted him in the third row. She nearly knocked over the child next to her with her wing, then giggled and kept going. Adrian felt his heart swell with an affection he hadn't known he was still capable of. Beside him, Elena squeezed his hand. She looked different now, rested, healthy, her hair glossy, her face free of the exhaustion that had been etched into it. She wore a simple blue dress and her daughter's matching angel necklace, handmade from pasta and paint. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For being there that night. For caring." Adrian squeezed back. "Thank you for raising someone brave enough to ask a stranger for help." But the story of what had happened in those 3 months was bigger than either of them had imagined. The flat in Limehouse had become more than just a home for Elena and Lily. It had become the heart of something unexpected. Elena had thrown herself into the property management role with the same fierce dedication she'd brought to everything else in her life. She'd organized the building, yes, handled maintenance requests, coordinated repairs, kept everything running smoothly. But she'd done something more. She'd built a community. It started small. She noticed that Mrs. Okafor in Flat 3 struggled to climb the stairs with her shopping. So Elena started a system. Residents could leave shopping lists, and she'd coordinate group orders, with younger tenants helping carry bags upstairs. Then she noticed that Mr. Kowalski in Flat 7, a widower, ate the same sad microwave meal every night. So she started a weekly community dinner in the building's common room. Residents brought dishes, shared meals, shared stories. Loneliness dissolved over plates of jollof rice and pierogi and shepherd's pie. When she learned that the Singh family in Flat 5 couldn't afford childcare, Elena organized a childcare co-op. Parents took turns watching each other's children, creating a web of support that meant no one had to choose between work and their kids. Adrian had watched this unfold with something like awe. He'd given Elena a job and a flat. She'd created a family for an entire building. "You know what the difference is?" Elena had told him one evening, as they watched Lily play with 3 other children in the common room. "Between people who have money and people who don't. It's not work ethic. I worked 3 jobs and could barely survive. It's not intelligence or talent or want. It's that when you have money, one emergency doesn't destroy everything you've built. You have a buffer, a safety net." She'd looked at him with those serious dark eyes. "What you gave me wasn't just a flat or a salary. You gave me breathing room. Room to think beyond tomorrow. Room to be kind to other people because I'm not drowning anymore. That's the real gift." Her words had stayed with him, and they'd sparked an idea. Adrian had spent the last 2 months quietly buying 3 more buildings in East London. Not as investments to flip, as community housing projects. He'd hired Elena to oversee all of them, tripled her salary, and given her a directive: create communities, not just tenancies. In each building, she'd implemented the same model. Fair rent, on-site support, community spaces, childcare co-ops, shared meals, job boards where residents could offer skills, tutoring, repairs, cooking lessons, and get help in return. It wasn't charity. It was something better. It was dignity. And it was spreading. Residents from Elena's buildings had started similar initiatives in their own neighborhoods. The woman who'd learned bookkeeping through the skills exchange had started teaching it to others. The man who'd gotten back on his feet after redundancy was now mentoring other job seekers. Kindness, Adrian had discovered, was contagious. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Work emails. A developer in Dubai wanted to meet about a luxury project. An investor was offering a partnership on a high-rise in Shoreditch. Deals that would make him richer. He glanced at the messages, then turned the phone face down. The deals could wait. On the stage, Lily forgot her line, improvised something about angels liking biscuits, and caused the entire audience to laugh. She beamed, delighted to have made people happy. "She's just like you," Adrian murmured to Elena. "What do you mean?" "She sees someone who needs help, and she helps. No hesitation. No calculation. Just kindness." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "She learned it from you. These last 3 months, watching you with her, with the residents, with everyone, you've shown her that kindness isn't weakness. It's strength." After the play, They drove back to Limehouse through streets decorated for Christmas. Lily chattered about her performance from the back seat, convinced she'd been the best angel in the history of angels. "It's like that night," she said suddenly, pressing her face to the window. "The rainy night when I found you, Adrian." "No, sweetheart," Elena said softly, meeting Adrian's eyes in the rearview mirror. "That was the night we all found each other." Back at the building, they were greeted by unexpected sounds. Laughter. Music. Light spilling from the common room. "What's going on?" Adrian asked. Elena smiled mysteriously. "Come see." The common room had been transformed. Residents had decorated it with handmade ornaments and fairy lights. A potluck dinner covered every surface, dishes from a dozen different cultures, the smell of spices and home cooking filling the air. "Surprise!" Mrs. Okafor called out. "We wanted to thank you both." Mr. Kowalski stepped forward, holding a frame. "We made this," he said gruffly. "All of us together." It was a photograph. All the residents gathered in front of the building, surrounded by handwritten notes. "Thank you for making this a home, not just a building. Thank you for seeing us as people, not just tenants. Thank you for showing us that community still exists. Thank you for kindness when the world feels harsh." And at the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting that Adrian recognized as Lily's. "Thank you for being my family." Adrian's vision blurred. Elena was crying openly. Lily, not quite understanding but feeling the love in the room, hugged his leg tightly. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out. Adrian cleared his throat, looking around at these faces. People from different countries, different backgrounds, different circumstances, all brought together by something as simple and profound as kindness. "I don't deserve this," he started. 3 months ago, I was standing in the rain, about to call my driver, thinking about my next deal. Then a brave little girl asked me for help, and my entire life changed." He looked down at Lily, then at Elena. "My mother used to say that success isn't measured in buildings owned or deals closed. It's measured in lives touched, in hands held, in moments when you choose to show up for someone." I'd forgotten that. I'd spent 15 years building an empire and forgetting how to be human. His voice grew stronger. "But here's what I've learned. Kindness isn't just about helping someone once. It's about creating systems where people can help each other, where everyone has enough breathing room to be kind, where one emergency doesn't destroy everything you've built." He gestured around the room. "This, what Elena's built here, what you've all built together, this is what matters. Not the buildings themselves, but the community inside them. The way Mrs. Okafor checks on Mr. Kowalski. The way the Singh family and the Martinez family watch each other's children. The way you all look out for each other. My mother helped Elena 15 years ago," Adrian continued. "Elena raised Lily to be brave enough to ask for help. Lily saved her mother's life and reminded me how to feel. Elena's building communities. Those communities are inspiring others. And it keeps spreading like ripples in water, touching lives we'll never even know about." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "That's the thing about kindness. It never really disappears. You give it away, and it travels through time, growing, multiplying, waiting for the moment it's needed most. And when it comes back, it returns 100 times stronger than when you sent it out into the world." The room erupted in applause. Residents crowded around, sharing hugs and stories and food. Children ran between adults' legs. Laughter bounced off walls. Later that evening, after the party wound down, Adrian stood on the building's roof terrace with Elena and Lily. The Thames glinted in the distance, the city spread out before them like a blanket of lights. "I've been thinking," Elena said quietly, "about expanding the model. What if we created a training program? Taught other property managers how to build communities like this? Made it replicable?" Adrian smiled. "I've actually been thinking the same thing. I've set up a foundation. The Margaret Fletcher Foundation for Community Housing. You'd run it, of course." Elena turned to him, eyes wide. "Adrian, it's not charity," he said gently. "It's a job. A real one. With a salary that reflects its importance. We'll train property managers, fund community initiatives, prove that housing can be about more than profit. We'll show that kindness can be a business model. Named after your mother," Elena whispered. "Named after the woman who started all of this. Who showed you kindness when you needed it. Who taught me, through her words in a journal, what really matters." He looked down at Lily, who was drawing constellations in the air with her finger. She'd love knowing that her kindness is still spreading, 15 years later. Lily tugged on Adrian's sleeve. Are you my family now? Like forever family? Adrian crouched down to her level, this little girl who'd changed everything. If you'll have me, yes. Forever family. Good, Lily said seriously. Because you're really good at making dinosaur nuggets now, and I'd hate to have to train someone new. They all laughed, the sound carrying out across the rooftops of London. Adrian thought about the man he'd been 3 months ago, standing in the rain, emotionally dead, measuring his life in properties owned and deals closed. He'd been successful by every conventional measure, and he'd been completely bankrupt in every way that actually mattered. Now, standing here with this makeshift family, his phone full of messages from residents asking for advice or sharing good news, his calendar full of community dinners and school plays and training sessions. Now he finally understood what wealth actually meant. It wasn't the money in his accounts, though that helped. It wasn't the properties with his name on them, though they served a purpose now. True wealth was measured in small hands trusting yours, in the privilege of being present for ordinary miracles, in the choice to show up and care, even when it wasn't convenient or expected or profitable. True wealth was knowing that a moment of kindness could echo through 15 years and save 3 lives. His mother's student, that student's daughter, and a man who'd forgotten how to feel. Look, Lily pointed at the sky. A shooting star. Make a wish. Adrian didn't need to wish. He had everything that mattered right here. But Elena closed her eyes and whispered something. When she opened them, she was smiling. What did you wish for? Adrian asked. That kindness keeps spreading, she said simply. That what we're building here inspires others. That someday, years from now, someone we've never met will show kindness to a stranger. And they won't even know it started with your mother helping a crying student, or Lily asking you for help in the rain. They'll just do it because that's what people do in a world that remembers how to care. Adrian pulled them both close, this family he'd found in a storm. The rain had stopped months ago, but what it had washed clean remained. A heart that had remembered how to break open. A child who'd been brave enough to trust. A woman who'd turned survival into community. And a circle of kindness that would keep growing, rippling outward, touching lives neither of them would ever know about. Because that's the thing about kindness. Once you set it in motion, it never really stops. It just keeps finding people who need it most. And it changes everything. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to remember that kindness still exists in this world. Leave a comment below telling me about a time a stranger showed you unexpected kindness. I read every single one, and your stories matter. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because next week I'm bringing you another true story that will restore your faith in humanity. Until then, remember this. You never know when a simple act of kindness might change someone's entire life, or your own. Be the Adrian who stops in the rain. Be the Lily who's brave enough to ask for help. Be the Elena who pays kindness forward. Because kindness never disappears. It just waits for the perfect moment to return. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And thank you for believing that the world can still be good. See you next week.